But today, just two verses. Dear friends, James chapter 4, verse 11. Dear friends, as part of God's family, never speak against another family member. For when you slander a brother or sister, you violate God's law of love. And your duty is not to make yourself a judge of the law of love by saying that it doesn't apply to you. Your duty is to obey it. There is only one true lawgiver and one judge, the one who has the power to save and destroy. So, James says, who do you think you are to judge your neighbor? Now, when we judge others, in effect, James says we're playing God. Now, why do we do that? Why do we get a kick out of judging other people? Well, first of all, sometimes we do it out of guilt. We do it out of our own guilt. Maybe we're guilty of doing the very same thing we're judging others for. And when they do it, it reminds us of ourselves. Paul writes, every time you criticize someone, you condemn yourself. It takes one to know one. Judgmental criticism of others is a well-known way of escaping detection in your own crimes and misdemeanors. But God isn't so easily diverted. He sees right through all such smoke and screens, and he holds you to what you've done. You didn't think, did you, that just by pointing your finger at others. And what did your mama tell you about when you point your finger? When you're pointing at others, there's three fingers coming back at yourself. Did you think that just by pointing your finger at others, you would distract God from seeing all your misdoings and from coming down on you hard? Or did you think that because he's such a nice God, he'd let you off the hook? Better think this one through from the beginning. Now watch this. God is kind, but he's not soft. In kindness, he takes us firmly by the hand and leads us into a radical life change. There's a second reason we judge others. It appeals to our pride. We judge others because of pride. Sometimes it just feels good to know that somebody else is in more trouble than you are. Proverbs 26:22 says this, there's nothing so delicious as the taste of gossip. It melts in your mouth. Then James tells us why. He tells us why we shouldn't judge others. First of all, he says it's unchristian. It's just not like Christ to be that way. Verse 11 in the Good News translation says, if you criticize or judge another Christian, you criticize and judge the law. So when you see another brother or sister in the faith stumble and fall, don't judge them, don't criticize them, help them up. Now we all know John 3:16, but look at what John 3:17 says. It says that God did not send his Son into the world to judge the world guilty, but to do what? To save the world through him. So if Jesus didn't come to the world to judge it, who in the world do we think we are by judging others? It's unchristian to judge. And second, it's unloving. Back in chapter 2 of James, and verse 8, maybe you remember this passage, James says that the royal law is found in Scriptures to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then he says, if you obey this law, you're doing right. Now, you can't love somebody and judge them at the same time, because judging goes against that great commandment that Jesus gave to love your neighbor as yourself. Or as James calls it, I love how he calls it, the royal law of love. Then in James chapter 4, verse 11, he says, dear friends, as part of God's family, never speak against another family member. For when you slander a brother or sister, you violate God's law of love. So it's unchristian to judge others. It's unloving to judge others. But third, it's just unjustified. You can't justify it. Judging is God's job. It's not your job. It's not my job. Verse 12, James 4:12, there is only one true lawgiver and judge, and the one who has the power to save and destroy. So who do you think you are to judge your neighbor? How can you say to another believer, let me take the piece of sawdust out of your eye, when you have a beam, a wooden beam, a telephone pole in your own eye? You're being a hypocrite, Jesus says. First, acknowledge your own blind spots. That's hard to do. Well, the Bible gives us 3 very good reasons to stop judging. First of all, we've all got to remember that one day we will all be judged. Romans 14, verse 12 says, so each of us will have to answer to God, and for that reason, we should stop judging each other. Second, remember that God will judge us by the standards we use to judge others. That's a pretty sobering thought. Jesus said so in Matthew 7, verse 1, that same sermon. He said, do not judge others so that God will not judge you, for God will judge you in the same way, what? You judge others. And he will apply to you the same rules you apply to others. And finally, remember this, that if we do not show mercy, God will not show mercy to us. Back in James chapter 2, verse 13, James says, so you must show mercy to others, or God will not show mercy to you when he judges you. But the person who shows mercy can stand without fear at the judgment.